Welcome to Feminist Founders, the community for entrepreneurs who are ready to reject toxic capitalism and do business differently and better. We're your hosts, Becky Mollenkamp and Faith Clarke, and we're so excited you're here. If you'd like to support our work, please consider a paid membership. Information is in the show notes. But without further ado, let's get into today's episode.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Feminist Founders series on a summer series on invisible labor, where we're going to talk about, either it's going to be me or Becky talking about our own experience with invisible labor, or even interviewing leaders and their navigation, their awareness and navigation of invisible labor, leaders who aren't men, and particularly who aren't white men. Today, I had planned a slightly different presentation, but I'm pretty exhausted right now, and I thought I would just come to you the way that I am, tired. And I was like, oh, am I podcast ready? But this is the way it is. Because you see, just on this theme, this idea of invisible labor, I think it's important for us to just acknowledge what's going on in our real lives, so I'll just give you a snapshot into my real life. I have, as many of you know, my oldest adult offspring has autism and is very challenged by it, has a lot of sensory processing issues and sensory issues that can be really disruptive to his own peace of mind and comfort. And that leads to sleep disturbance. And lots of parents of humans with autism that gets in the way of their lives in significant embodied ways will tell you about the sleep issues that they've often faced, because if a kid can't sleep, then you can't sleep. So this is, my son is 26. So this is pretty much 26 years of my own sleep disturbance. But last night, and I have cameras in the house because he's also, he's super smart and has dismantled multiple systems and gotten out, and it's been nerve-wracking. And so aside from all of the locking mechanisms, I have cameras. But last night, while I was trying to go to bed, and he hadn't gone to bed, but sometimes if I feel settled enough, I try to not be hyper vigilant and trying to get him into bed and just seeing if he'll tire himself out and go to bed. And often that happens. But last night he didn't. And I saw him standing at a door that should have been locked, eating, and we had a gigantic tub of peanut butter, and he was just kind of thoroughly enjoying this tub of peanut butter. But my brain was like, how did he get that peanut butter? How come that door is open? What's going on? So I ran downstairs. I was looking at him from the camera on my phone, and I ran downstairs and saw that he had opened a window that was above the kitchen sink. So it's a little bit high off the ground, not a full floor, but high off the ground, and had walked in the yard through to a back door that was also unlocked. And, there's a part of me that's often like to my other kids, like, please don't leave the doors unlocked. And please remember when you come back in to lock a door. But because this door was unlocked, that was his plan to kind of get into an area that's locked off for him. So he got back in through this door and into another room where we have additional supplies and a refrigerator and so on, and got to the peanut butter there. And I was, it just hit me because, one of my nightmares is to have the police interact with Jaden because of any of his elopement or anything else. And so I just thought about how it could have been at midnight with him walking in the yard if the door had been locked, if anything hadn't worked out and he was somewhere and I hadn't known for this period. It's just a short window, and just the reality of what could have happened, it just smacked my system. And I felt the combination of exhaustion. I am constantly trying to figure out how to help his body regulate. I'm constantly trying to figure out how to help myself feel more rested. I am navigating all the various systems, trying to access resources for the support. What's covered by his insurance? What's covered by Medicaid? What can I get? And just on and on conversations with people. And I told people early in my autism journey that you have autism binge and purge. Sometimes you're like deep in research and you just trying to deal with it and get all the knowledge so you can help apply it to figure out what's going on for your son, for your kid. And at other times, it's like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear anything. I don't want anything adding to my list of things to do. And so just last night, I felt the overwhelm of it, of the a million questions with no answers, of the tightness of my own resourcing and both emotional and capacity and the ideal Bruce Perry's research. I enjoy Bruce Perry's research on trauma-informed everything. And he talks about, many of us are from whether tribal or other indigenous communities, original, however many generations ago, that were 150 people to 200 people, probably, with an average of 6 adults to 1 child. And I talk about this perhaps in another either conversation with me and Becky in some context. Like, we have this artificial system that we've set up with, the nuclear family, which is just not supportive enough. But then I'm also a single parent, as in a solo parenting my kids. And so just the feeling of overwhelm in the moment, I felt angry that this is what I'm thinking about. Not angry with anyone, but just angry and then sad. But it also interrupted my ability to just rest. My nervous system was so activated that, it was hard to settle after that. And so although I got out a handy screwdriver, I have tools and I know how to secure windows firmly. And I did, because he can unlock it. If I can lock it and unlock it, he can unlock it, unless you do something manual. So I did all that, which is pretty activating. And then, so the combination of the cognitive and the emotional and then the physical stuff. And I didn't go to sleep for some time after that. And he was tired and full. And so he went to sleep, but only briefly. And so when I woke up at 4, he was up and he was pacing in the kitchen and actively checking the windows. And I think because of that and because of my own activation, I just didn't go back to bed. And I went downstairs by 5 o'clock and just pretended it was day. And we hung up, because if I'm there, he knows he's not supposed to be checking the windows. So if I'm there, it's less likely that he'll look at the windows and find something I've overlooked. And because of it, I rescheduled with a client this morning. I just texted them and said, I can't. I just can't this morning. And said a brief bit about why. And I feel really grateful that because of the kinds of community I've built, people understand what's going on, and we understand that we're all human, just doing our best. And so I said, I'll send you after the staff comes in. My son has staff, and after the staff comes in the morning, I'm gonna try to just decompress, and then I will be back with you. And it threw off everything for today. Like, I have content I'm creating. I have a couple of tools I'm creating for clients. I am processing some work that I'm doing with a nonprofit. And so there's multiple pieces to that work. And so I'm holding this pretty, significant plan that I'm navigating with them. And I'm trying to make sure my son gets his passport renewed. As you can tell, with autism, it's not super straightforward to just get a photo taken and fill out the form and go in. And, I am in conversations with his medical team to try and figure out if I wanted to get him on a bus or a train, how to do that. Are there medications that will support his ability to be calm? So all of the things, it was just noisy in my head. And as I knew I have been preparing this work on invisible labor for some time. Paris Paloma's labor song has been in my mind, all the places where, because of the systemic nature of oppression for people with marginalized identities, there are all these places that invisible labor has been infused into the system. And the more marginalized identities you have, the more you feel this weight, right? And the more you feel you should be carrying this, the more you've taken it on and absorbed it as just a normal part of being alive, being a person in your body. And so as a kind of, I am both researching it and processing it for clients and living it. And the combination has been interesting, and it's been a lot of heart work, because there's a way that when you're just living it, you can blind yourself to it, you can numb yourself to it to cope with it. But as I am navigating it with clients and then it's mirrored back to me, it's been pretty intense. And I think that all of us, regardless of the types of businesses we're in and the types of places we are, this is true for us. The more multiply marginalized identities you have, the more under-resourced you are systemically, the more you carry just to maintain place and space in the system. And so outside of this context of Feminist Founders, I work with nonprofit leaders and social impact organization leaders on how to build cultures that help them hold the weight and have the impact that they want to have without the not spending as much time and so more impact, less time, less energy, less giving your lifeblood for the mission, which is so much a part of our social impact work. You give your life. The martyring is a part of it, and a lot of that is also systemic injustice, right? Because who gets martyred? It's not the person on the top often, right? It's somebody gives their life for the cause. And a lot of our leaders who want to do amazing work in the world, they're like, yeah, we're the ones. If I don't do it, who will? And so many of the women that I support, that's in their mind. Like, I can't just let it go. Let it go for who to catch, And there's that commonality for me with my kids, because they're all neurodivergent and require a fair amount of support, and yet may not want the kind of support that would be the easiest for me. So there's always this balancing act and figuring stuff out. And that's on the personal level. And I think every nonprofit leader that I support has a ton of stuff happening on the personal level that's not being fully factored in. That there is a fundamental lack of inclusion of the self in business design. And if we're not intentional about it, we will exclude ourselves from our own businesses and organizations. So it's been fascinating to process. I want to share just some statistics, because I identify with Luisa in Encanto. I can remember when I was watching Encanto and Luisa came on and she started the song. And I mean, it's an animated movie, and I was to tears. The extent to which I felt Luisa in my body, I was to tears. And so when I introduce myself and I say, I'm Faith, I'm an Afro-Caribbean immigrant woman, mother of kids who are maverick superhero kids who are also neurovariant, I am allowing myself to name the identities and therefore the pressure, versus absorbing it as if it's not there, because every one of those identities has its own pressure. So wanted to just share some statistics with you. These statistics are relevant to the nonprofit world and yet relevant to all of us, because if you're listening to this, likely you are in some kind of social impact. You have a business that is committed to bettering people and planet. And so you fall in this category, even though you may not be officially a nonprofit. So there is why is there invisible labor? Or we talked about it, right? Under-resourced, etc. But I started to do some digging as to what this under-resourcing is. And within organizations that are social impact, in particular nonprofits, 75% of the people who work in nonprofits are women. And yet they don't represent the majority of CEOs of large nonprofits. In fact, there's only 22%, I think, of women who are in top leadership levels in large nonprofits. They call it the the escalator paradox. What is it? Let me see if I can find the name of it. There is a glass escalator. Even within women-dominated fields, men rise faster. So there is a large number of women who are holding the bulk of the work and yet not necessarily advancing to leadership in the larger nonprofits. Why is that significant? Because in the larger nonprofits, they have bigger budgets, they're more resourced, these larger nonprofits. We know about this. There's pay gap issues, right? So if you are, even if you're running your own business and you're trying to kind of make it productive and you are in another one of these organizations as your bread and butter, as your daytime gig, you know that if you are not a man, then you're earning less on average than the men do. And so you're just personally, your life is complicated and then personally under-resourced. 64 cents on the dollar for women of color. For every dollar that a white man earns, women of color earn 64 cents. It's startling, right? So it's not just in my head, this feeling that I have of being under-resourced. It's in fact, right? My dollar is not the same as another person's dollar. Even if I have it, it's worthless because, you know what I mean? Anyway, worthless. There is a, what was I going to call it? Role multiplication. I'm just looking at my notes. Role multiplication. Because of the nature of things that have to be done, you'll find that women in these leadership roles are wearing multiple hats. They're doing a bunch of different things because under-resourced and all the things. And so they may not even name their roles. And so, yeah, my client is the ED, which she's the ED and she's program director and she's, teaching a class and she calls all of that ED. But really, and like many of us in our businesses, we're holding multiple roles that we are not experts on, roles that we're just trying to figure out, roles that it's effortful to hold those roles because of the under-resourcing and because of the gatekeeping that shows up for people with marginalized identities. And then, so it was funny to also note that organizations led by women and about issues that affect women, I don't have the statistic here, they get less funding. They get fundamentally less funding. Like this, what did they call it? A funding apartheid, resource apartheid. Just underfunding is a feature of these organizations, whether for-profits or non-profits. And so it was just humbling to note some of the data. And I think I just wanted to offer the thought to myself as I kind of sat at 5 this morning, at midnight at 5 this morning, that it isn't me. I am under-resourced. This is a lot. It is too much. I was built, if you want to think about it, as built as a human being, I was built for communal support. I was built to work together with it, not to be by myself, sorting things out and thinking things out. But it is a systemic injustice that makes it seem as if you have to hold it all, whatever role it is that you're in. And I think the path to relief starts with naming the invisible labor, just naming it. And if you already have a team or family or community that wants to be with you, naming it in their presence constantly, not in complaining, just in creating an environment where we name the invisible labor. The emotional labor in particular, I didn't talk about that there, but the women tend to hold a ton of the emotional labor of keeping relationships and interactions happening. I mean, business is people working together, and there is an essential emotional component to getting people working together. And often the women in leadership and not in leadership, the women just hold that work of making that happen without acknowledgement and without support for it. So naming the invisible labor is, I think, the step number one. Number two is being willing to notice that there are accolades that come to us for being the Louisas, being the people who carry it all, for being like Atlas holding the world, and to do our work to release whatever it is that we get from the martyrdom. I'm not blaming myself, but I'm acknowledging that in the times when I have managed it well, when people see me managing it well and they say, Faith, I don't know how you do it, I get a little dopamine from that. and to be okay with that, but also to let myself, therefore, as part of the healing, it's just to notice that I would be giving up that dopamine hit for my health, though, right? For my health. It's like giving up social media for my health. But to notice that, because it's going to feel a little uncomfortable when you do the next thing I'm saying, which is ask for help. Like deliberately build leadership, collective leadership capacity. And if you want, we can talk about that. Like there are lots of strategies and ways that you can redesign how you work, so that collective leadership, collective strategic thinking, that collective support, like a platform that holds you up and that shares with you the weight, is what you're building, instead of kind of, I'm the person on top figuring it out. None of us want that, but also this system rewards that, So I would just say, let's name it. And I'm just thank you for listening to me name some of mine. Let's share it, name it, share it in company with people. And let's tend to the part of us that likes the affirmation that the system gives us from it. And then let's figure out how to build collective leadership and collective support. And this does start with asking for help, but it's not just the asking for help. That's just step one. It's building a system that pays attention to what you're paying attention to. Often leaders tell me that they just wish their team would pay attention to what they're paying attention to, but the team can't do that because the system doesn't reward that. There's so much systemic stuff going on in how we lead and how businesses are designed. And so redesigning so that everyone is sensing what you're sensing, and there is a responsive, self-organizing structure that's holding it. That's the culture that you want to build and that we need to build around us. And whether that's with your staff or just your friends or your family, whatever it is, that's kind of what we need to be seeking. And it's hard to be seeking it in a system where we're all been trained in the same way. We've all been trained according to the same scripts. And so we'll come upon obstacles and barriers to it. And I guess I just invite you, as I invite myself, to stay steady as much as you can to kind of get the relief you need, get yourself the care you need, invite other people into your circle to care for you, and then keep at the, how can I imagine this differently? How can I imagine this differently? There's got to be a way to imagine this differently. And also let's brainstorm with each other. So as you'll be watching, you may have watched another episode already, and you'll be watching other episodes where we talk about this invisible labor. I want to hear what's coming up for you. I want to hear how you're thinking about it. I want to hear what you're noticing and what's helped you to shed some of it. I'll be sharing ideas and things that I've been doing, and I will start to do as part of my own releasing of the martyrdom and the broad back and the exceptional Black, and all these ideas that basically just reinforce invisible labor. And I invite you to do the same. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Be sure to reach out and tell us what you're thinking and how you're interacting with this idea of invisible labor, especially over the summer, where random stuff is just going to show up in your calendar if you have kids. And even if you don't, family things and like whatever is going to show up. And when those things show up in the tightness of the life that we live, with the amount of stuff that we are juggling, it can bring some of us close to our breaking point. So if that's going on for you, definitely reach out and definitely pull the support people close. This isn't the time for us to pretend like we have it all together, right? Again, the need to look like we have it all together, old system stuff. That's not what we're here about here at Feminist Founders. All right. It's been lovely allowing myself to express. I hope that this helps you think about what's going on for you in terms of your own invisible labor, and we'll talk again.
Thanks for being here. And again, we hope you'll consider joining our paid membership to help support our work. The link is in the show notes. When you join, you get all of this, obviously, but also bonus content in a private podcast feed, as well as free admission into our Feminist Founders Society community calls. It's a wonderful growing community, and we'd love to have you be a part of it and to support the work we do with Feminist Founders. Until next time, keep kicking toxic capitalism to the curb, friends.